My daughter-in-law printed a listing for the guest room before she ever said a word to me about moving out. I found it face down on the printer tray, a photo of my own bed staged with someone else's pillows, the price already set at $1,800 a month. I didn't say anything that night. I just folded it in half, put it in my coat pocket, and started making 3 phone calls the next morning. For weeks later, a moving truck sat in my driveway, and it wasn't carrying my things out. My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 70 years old. I spent 36 years as a machinist at a plant outside Rockford, Illinois, and for the last 14 months I lived in my son's guest room, believing I was saving everyone money. This is the story of the room that was never really mine, and the day I found out exactly what it was worth to them. My wife June and I were married 42 years before a lung condition took her from me 2 winters ago. Slow at first and then all at once, the way those things sometimes go. After the funeral, I sat in our house on Winnebago Street for almost a year by myself, and I'll admit it, the quiet nearly broke me some days. My son Todd called me every week without fail, and about 14 months ago, he and his wife Lauren showed up on a Sunday afternoon with an idea that felt, at the time, like the kindest thing anyone had offered me since June passed. "Dad, that house is too much for one person," Todd said, standing in my kitchen with his hands in his jacket pockets the way he'd done since he was a boy nervous about asking for something. "Why don't you sell it, move in with us for a while? You'd have your own room, help out with the kids, and we could all save some money while we figure things out." I said yes before he even finished the sentence. I sold the house on Winnebago Street inside of 6 weeks, cleared just under $210,000 after the mortgage was paid off, and moved into the guest bedroom of Todd and Lauren's house on a quiet cul-de-sac outside Rockford, believing, with my whole chest, that I was finally going to be surrounded by family again instead of grieving alone in a house that echoed. I am not a man who ever expected to be handed anything. 36 years on a factory floor teaches you that everything worth having gets earned, and I told myself moving in wasn't charity, it was contribution. I picked my grandkids up from school 3 days a week, a boy named Jack who was 9 and a girl named Sophie who was 6, and I never once complained about it because those 2 kids were the best part of my day, most days. I fixed the leaking faucet in their kitchen the first week I moved in, replaced the garage door opener that had been broken for a year, mowed the lawn every Saturday from April through October, and never asked for a dime for any of it, because that's not how I was raised to treat family. I put $1,200 a month into their household account for groceries and utilities, more than my share by any honest measure, and I never once mentioned that the $210,000 sitting quietly in my savings account could have covered a year of their mortgage without me even noticing the dent. For the first few months, it genuinely felt like a blessing, the way Todd had promised it would. Lauren cooked most nights, and I'd sit at the table with the kids while she and Todd talked about their days, and for the first time since June died, the house I lived in didn't feel empty at bedtime. I told my old neighbor Ray, who I still met for coffee every couple weeks, that I was the luckiest widower in Winnebago County, having a son who actually wanted his old man around. I had no idea, none at all, that the room I was sleeping in every night had already started looking to somebody in that house like square footage instead of family. By the 6th month, small things started shifting, the kind of things you talk yourself out of noticing because you don't want to believe what they might mean. Lauren started referring to my room, when she was on the phone with her sister in the kitchen, as the extra room instead of Arthur's room, a small distinction I noticed but let pass without comment. She mentioned, more than once at dinner, how a coworker of hers had turned a spare bedroom into a short-term rental and was clearing close to $1,500 a month doing almost nothing for it. Todd started asking questions I hadn't expected, whether I'd thought about long-term plans, whether I'd looked into any of the retirement communities near his office, said a buddy of his had a parent at a place called Maple Grove Estates who seemed to really love it there. I told him I hadn't given it much thought, that I liked being close to the grandkids, and he nodded and dropped it, and I believed, the way I always believe things I wanted to be true, that it was really dropped. Around the 8th month, Lauren started leaving pamphlets on the kitchen counter, glossy ones with soft lighting and smiling gray-haired actors on the cover, for places with names like Maple Grove and Willowbrook Senior Living. When I asked her about them, she said, easy as anything, "Oh, those are just for research, Arthur, in case you ever wanted more independence someday." More independence. That's the phrase she used, standing in a kitchen where I already made dinner twice a week and picked her kids up from school 3 days out of 5. I didn't argue. I didn't want to be the paranoid old man reading conspiracy into a stack of brochures somebody left on a counter, so I kept quiet, kept driving the kids to soccer practice, kept mowing that lawn every Saturday, while some part of me, the part that spent 36 years reading tolerances down to the thousandth of an inch, started paying much closer attention to every word coming out of that kitchen. It happened on a Tuesday evening in late October. I'd gone down to the basement to grab a load of laundry, the printer and a small home office setup tucked into the corner near the stairs, when I noticed a sheet of paper sitting face down on the printer tray, still warm from printing. I almost left it alone, but something made me pick it up and turn it over, and what I saw stopped me cold on the bottom step. It was a rental listing, professionally formatted, a photo of my own bedroom staged with different bedding, different curtains, a small desk added where my recliner currently sat. The listing described it as a private furnished room in a quiet family home, ideal for a working professional, priced at $1,800 a month, available starting the 1st of next month. I stood there on those basement steps holding that piece of paper for what felt like a very long time, my heart doing something slow and heavy in my chest, reading the words, available starting the 1st of next month, over and over until they stopped making any kind of sense at all. I did not confront anybody that night. I want to be honest about why, because it wasn't fear, not exactly. 36 years on a factory floor teaches you something about not reacting the moment you're angry, about gathering every fact you can before you say a single word out loud that you can't take back. I folded that listing in half, slipped it into my coat pocket hanging by the basement stairs, finished the load of laundry like nothing in the world had changed, and went to bed that night lying awake until nearly 3 in the morning, running through every brochure, every comment about more independence, every mention of Maple Grove Estates, watching all of it line up into a shape I'd been too trusting to see clearly until that piece of paper landed in my hands. The next morning, I called my old neighbor Ray, who'd spent 30 years in commercial real estate before he retired, and told him everything over coffee at the diner on Alpine Road. Ray listened without interrupting once, then said something I've thought about every day since. Arthur, if they're already listing your room online before they've said a word to you, this isn't a conversation they're planning to have. This is a plan they're already executing. Ray gave me the number of a financial advisor he trusted, a woman named Carol Jimenez whose office sat above a hardware store downtown, and I called her that same afternoon, sitting in my truck in the diner parking lot with my hands not quite steady on the steering wheel. I met with Carol 2 days later, laid everything out plainly, the $210,000 sitting in savings, the pension I'd been collecting quietly every month that Todd and Lauren had never once asked about, the $1,200 a month I'd been contributing to their household without complaint. Carol pulled up numbers on her computer while I talked, and told me clearly that I had more than enough sitting untouched to buy a modest condo outright. No mortgage, no waiting, if I moved quickly and quietly and didn't let anyone talk me into thinking it over, for another 6 months while a rental listing for my own bedroom sat active online. She asked me a question that made my stomach turn over the same way it had on those basement stairs. Had Todd or Lauren asked me to sign anything lately, described as something routine, something I hadn't gotten around to yet? And I remembered a folder Todd had left on my dresser 2 weeks earlier, telling me it was just an updated form for my health insurance that needed my signature for their records, sitting untouched on my nightstand because I don't sign anything without my reading glasses and a clear head. Carol asked me to bring that folder in the next day, and when I did, she confirmed exactly what Ray and I had both already started to suspect. It wasn't a health insurance form at all. It was a residency agreement for Maple Grove Estates, my name typed in at the top, a deposit amount already calculated, a signature line waiting at the bottom for a pen that wasn't supposed to be mine to hand over so easily. That folder changed something in me the way overhearing a comment or finding a printed listing never quite could have on their own. My own son had left paperwork on my nightstand and called it insurance. Carol helped me understand my options clearly, laid out step by step, and the first thing we did was start looking at properties that same week, quietly, while Todd and Lauren believed I was simply going along with dinner conversations about exploring options down the road. Carol connected me with a realtor named Diane Marsh who specialized in condos for buyers my age, and within 9 days we'd toured 6 units and found one I genuinely loved, a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building near the river downtown, close enough to Todd's house that I could still see the grandkids whenever I wanted, but entirely, completely mine. I made an offer that same week, all cash, no financing needed, no waiting on approval, and the seller accepted within 48 hours, eager for a clean, fast closing. I opened a new checking account at a credit union across town that Todd had no history with and no reason to check, moved my mail to a post office box downtown, and started meeting Diane every Thursday afternoon while Todd and Lauren thought I was at physical therapy for my knee, the same excuse I'd been quietly using for 3 weeks running. To keep Todd and Lauren relaxed and unsuspecting, I did something that still makes me smile a little now. I let Lauren take me on a tour of Maple Grove Estates the following weekend, walked through those hallways with the soft lighting and the smell of lemon cleaner, nodded politely at the activities calendar pinned to a corkboard by the dining hall, and even told the tour coordinator the community room looked lovely, all while knowing I had absolutely no intention of ever living there. Lauren looked so pleased in the car afterward, telling Todd on speakerphone that Arthur seemed really open to it, and I almost felt sorry for the two of them. Almost. Meanwhile, Diane Marsh had closing scheduled inside of 18 days, fast enough to catch nobody's attention, quiet enough that not a single person outside Ray, Carol, and Diane knew a single thing about it. About 2 weeks after I made the offer, Todd came home from work practically glowing, the kind of excited I hadn't seen from him since he was a boy who'd made the baseball team. His company was sending him and Lauren to a conference in Milwaukee for 6 days, all expenses paid, and Lauren was already talking about the hotel spa and a dinner reservation downtown. Actually perfect timing, Dad, Todd told me over dinner, not realizing exactly how right he was. While we're gone, maybe you could think more seriously about Maple Grove. Lauren found a listing site to get the guest room posted properly too, once you're settled somewhere. Really open things up around here. I told him I'd think about it, same calm voice I'd been using for 3 weeks, and inside I was doing the math. Diane had already confirmed closing could happen the following Wednesday, for days into their trip, and the sellers, eager and ready, wanted nothing more than a clean handoff. Todd and Lauren left for the airport that Sunday morning, suitcases by the door, Jack and Sophie staying with me for the week since school was in session and somebody needed to get them there and back. I stood on the porch and waved as Todd's car pulled out of the driveway, and the second that car turned the corner and disappeared, I called Diane Marsh and told her one simple thing. Let's move the closing up if we can. Let's do it this week while they're gone before they ever get the chance to come home and ask me to reconsider anything at all. The closing happened that Wednesday, 3 days into Todd and Lauren's trip, in a small conference room at the title company on State Street, with Jack and Sophie sitting quietly in the waiting area with coloring books Diane had thoughtfully brought along. I signed page after page, feeling lighter with every signature, and when it was finally done, I had the keys to a place that belonged entirely to me. No mortgage, no landlord, no listing anybody could print out and leave face down on a printer tray. I spent that Wednesday afternoon and all of Thursday with 2 movers I'd hired quietly weeks in advance, packing up everything from my guest room, the recliner, June's jewelry box, the few boxes of photographs I'd kept from the house on Winnebago Street, and by Thursday evening, that room in Todd and Lauren's house sat completely empty, ready, I suppose, for whatever tenant Lauren had already been picturing in it. Before I left, I sat down at Todd and Lauren's kitchen table one last time and wrote a letter, not to be cruel, just to be honest, and taped it to the door of what used to be my bedroom, right where I knew they'd see it the moment they walked upstairs to check on things after their trip. I told them I'd found the rental listing on the printer that Tuesday in October, that I'd seen the residency agreement disguised as an insurance form, that I understood exactly what more independence and Maple Grove Estates had meant to both of them for months before I ever said a single word about any of it out loud. I told them I wasn't angry, not really, just disappointed in a way that ran deeper than anger, and that I'd bought myself a condo near the river with money they never once asked me about, using the same steady hands that spent 36 years earning every dollar of it. I told them Jack and Sophie were with a sitter Ray recommended for the rest of the week, safe and cared for, and that I hoped they'd both take some time to think about what family is actually supposed to mean before they saw me again. I signed it the way I'd signed every card to my son since he was small, love, Dad, locked the front door behind me for the last time, and drove to my new condo near the river without looking back once in the mirror. Todd told me later, though I didn't hear it from him directly until almost 2 weeks after, that he and Lauren came home that Saturday evening, tired and tan from the conference, Lauren already talking about unpacking and checking the mail. Todd walked upstairs first, the way he always did, meaning to drop his bag in the guest room out of habit before remembering the room wasn't his to walk into anymore, and found the door standing open, the room completely empty, the letter taped right at eye level where I knew he'd see it. According to Ray, who I'd asked to check on the house while they were gone and happened to be dropping off a spare key when they pulled in, Lauren read the letter first, standing right there in the doorway, and her hands started shaking about halfway through it. Ray said Todd took the letter from her when she couldn't finish reading it out loud, read the rest himself, and went very quiet. Quiet in a way Ray said he'd never seen from my son before. My phone started ringing about 20 minutes later. I didn't answer, not that first night. Todd called me 11 times over the next 2 days, and I let every single one go to voicemail, not out of cruelty, but because I genuinely wanted him to sit with exactly the feeling he'd been so ready to hand me without a second thought. On the third day, sitting on my new balcony overlooking the river with a cup of coffee in my hand, I finally picked up. His voice cracked the second I said hello. "Dad, please. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We can fix it. Just tell us where you are." I let him talk for a while, let him get through the apologies and the excuses about money and stress and how things had just gotten away from them faster than either of them meant for it to. And when he finally stopped, I told him the truth as plainly as I could. I told him I'd found that rental listing on the printer in October, that I'd found the residency agreement disguised as an insurance form on my nightstand 2 weeks before that I'd known exactly what Maple Grove Estates and that $1,800 listing meant to both of them for over a month before I ever said a word. I told him I wasn't going to yell at him because he was still my son and I still loved him. But that love didn't mean I owed him a bedroom I'd been quietly subsidizing while somebody printed out a photo of it staged for strangers. I told him I was happy, genuinely happy, in a place I'd chosen and paid for myself, close enough to see Jack and Sophie whenever I wanted, on my own terms, in my own name. Before I hung up, I told him the door wasn't completely closed, not forever, but that it would only open again once he understood I was his father, not $1,800 a month standing in the way of somebody else's spare room. I hung up the phone, set it down beside my coffee, and looked out at the river one more time, feeling, for the first time in 14 months, completely and finally at peace in a room that was entirely, permanently mine.